Everybody. Thank you for allowing me to join you, and sorry about the delay. All right, I'm here to talk to you about, I'm here to brag about my templating toys and my approach to templating in general. I'm Friedrich Weinmann. I work for Microsoft as a Premier Field Engineer, and you can find all the details here. I will link everything you see in this slide, in this presentation PowerPoint on GitHub, link it later, so all the resources in there will still be available. As a Premier Field Engineer, I never really have enough time to do everything I really want to do. I'm a bit of a workaholic, otherwise I wouldn't really be doing the job. But I'm lazy. I'm trying to make shortcuts, and doing repetitive work is tedious. I don't like doing that. So some time ago, I looked into Plaster for templating, and well, let's be honest, besides the fact that it hasn't seen any updates in 2 years, Plaster was not flexible enough. I needed to have lots of overload. I had lots of extra effort needed to study how to build this XML, how to manage the code, how to do all that. And some of the design decisions were just telling me, no, it's not worth the effort trying to fix that. So I went my own way and built my own templating engine, which is what I'm trying to show you about today. So without any further ado, let's create a new template. Now, when I template something, it doesn't need to be a large project. Even a single file that I keep using in this format often enough is worth making a template of. It's doing manual labor just goes against my religion. So let's just create a new template for our script. Just generic script scaffolding that we usually add to something like that. So the first thing is this special character is the form character. It's an Icelandic character that I like to use as a placeholder for things, because quite frankly, it almost never occurs naturally anywhere. There's just very low risk of conflict. If you want to type that, you need to, and that is the one thing that's kind of pissed me off about on this machine. You need to type this. It's the left Alt key on the keyboard, and on the numpad, it's 0254. Then release the Alt key, and the character turns up. This is the default placeholder it will use to insert variables, parameters that it will ask from the template after you record it. And you can change that. We'll cover how to change that later on. Let's create a new template. Spelling is now I generally see people putting in the author in here. We've got, might have a version of one for the first file. Then company we work for, generally we like to put in the company name in here. And let's see, the timestamp created on. And with this, we can insert a script block that will be executed when we invoke the template. Okay. So just a generic PowerShell script file that we can now could place scaffold, and we could add a write log function or reference to our helpers, whatever we generally prefer. But this is basic script scaffold. Yes. Script is template is ready. So let's record it. It's got a name. Let's call it my script. And it has a file path called and let's make sure I did not misspell this. I'm not great with parameter names remembering. Good. Template name, file path, and actually that's already it. Good, we're done. We now have a template that we can create new files with whenever we want. So invoke PSMD template, and there we go. There's quite a few default templates, so you don't get an empty box and need to create your own templates if you are happy enough to use the default ones. But my script is already available. So no, let's rock it. It asks me for a name. I'm just going to call it script. Now look in the folder, in the demo folder. We have a script.ps1, and I'm kind of an itch when I kind of itch when I don't get the indentation right. But let's go and look into the file. And if I did not mess things up, which I did not, we can now see that the offer was inserted automatically. I wasn't even asked for it. The company as well. The timestamp was executed. The file is named as we were prompted for the name. And that's it. We created an entire file template and we're able to use it within minutes. So why it already knew about offer and company, we'll cover soon enough. But this is all it takes to create a template. We can go a lot more complex, but we don't need any configuration file. We don't need anything. We just need to tell it where to insert stuff. So how does the whole thing work? Basically, we pointed at the raws where we have the raw data that we record, and then we compile compiled template. It's a CLI XML file that is stored on your machine somewhere. You don't have to care about where it is stored right away. We'll cover that soon, where it actually happens, but you don't need to manage the location. The module handles that for you. It's in your profile somewhere in map data. And when we invoke it, we get a list by name and can just invoke it and execute it. So when we want to create a new file, we don't need to care about where the hell the template is. This was one of my first complaints with Plaster, that I always needed to point at the path where the template is stored that I want to invoke. So I was quite zealous about fixing that. I also used invoke PSMD template because people tell me I should not be using aliases in presentations. I'm a naturally lazy person, and there is an alias for that, of course. And now I've got a second one. Okay. When we compile it, the templating engine looks into the raw file or folder structure. We can compile, we can read and record an entire module or other project, which we'll be covering soon enough. And it reads that and parses every single file and folder for its name and for the content. There are any placeholders marked by the identifier, the font character, and then goes ahead and makes a note like it needs to ask for that parameter, and then it will insert that. The same name across multiple files will be inserted will be inserted through the same parameter. Now, the templates are stored somewhere in the store. There's a registered folder, and you can add your own folders to that system, additional template stores. So a module can bring its own templates along with it. So if you've got a module that needs a new kind of file, configuration file, or hell, you can even record a plaster XML template, XML definition file if you want to template that. And a module could be shipping those. And just by importing the module, the template would become available. Or, yeah, or you could be defining a team template in your company and deploying it by group policy. You can do that. So I've got template management as part of the whole thing. And let's see, where the hell does that happen? Of course, we've got a get PSMD template as well. We can look at what templates are on board, and they've got a store property. And these are, by the name of the store, you can identify where it rests. So we've got, using the PowerShell framework configuration system, which is fully documented, and I've got a session recording from that from the PowerShell Summit. And the whole thing is backed by the configuration system. And every single store is registered as a configuration path, identified by the name, the book. The name of the store is the last element in the part, and there's a corresponding path to it. So I love it. Moment. Notebook keywords are not my favorite way to type. And now, there we go. For example, the PS module development path, template store, is pointing directly at the module folder of the PS module development module. So it registers its own template store. And any other module could be doing the same thing in its call by simply creating a new template store. Set use of config. You would, no matter the module, need to use the piece module development .template .store .presentation, and we can now value pointed at the demo folder. Created it. And with that, we now can copy the new PSMD template call and see what we do with that. Now, if we don't specify anything, it will store it in the default folder, which is surprisingly enough, the default folder, and that points at the at your app data somewhere in the roaming profiles. Under PS Framework, config, Windows PowerShell, PS Module Development. There it will store the files. Now, if we want to record a template to somewhere else, we just specify out store and pick the new one. We just registered it, so presentation is immediately offered. And while we're at it, let's specify a version. We already have a version 1.0. So let's go with 1.01. And while we're at it, add another node. And maybe already on creation, ask for synopsis. So we updated, added a new version of the template. And now we're going to record version 1.01 and save it to the store. Did I mess something? Oh, yes, I did mess something up because it should be the tab demo. And if I, sorry, if I don't do the parametering wrong, things will also have a significantly increased rate of success. So let's record it. And with that, get psmd template, my script executed. We can now see we've got a version 1.01 in the presentation store. If we want to see all versions, we can specify all. And you can see there's our version 1 on the default store and version 1.01 in presentation. If we have got the same template name with different versions, the module will automatically pick the latest version unless we retrieve the version we want using get psmd template. So if you want to replace one of the default templates with your own, all you need to do is record the template under the same name with a higher version number, and it will be gone. Okay, now Fred, I know you like using templates, but aliases, but that happened. And that's it. The new version is created from the presentation store. Okay, I just told something like we could manage that by group policy deploy our company or team-wide template store. And that is true. All we need to do is distribute registry key under this path or HKey current user, local machine or global. Give it a name, whatever we want to call it, and set the path. However, needing to use group policy for persistence seems like a bad call. Let's start a new console and import a module. we can see the presentation store we defined is not available. So this works, but just running that piece of config does not mean it's stored persistently. And if we want to define by group policy, that's good enough. But as admins, at least for me, I've never really needed to deploy it by group policy. I usually just want it to be remembered on my admin machine. For example, we have here, if you look at it, we've got a shared folder that points at a GitHub folder that I sync on all my machines. And I want to have shared templates across all my machines I work at. So it's a more convenience thing I want to have available on my machines, not need a group policy that might not really work on this. So if I want to have it remember that, then I want it to be stored. What I do is I run register piece of config. And if I now restart the console, we can see it remembered the setting. Register piece of config basically interactively sets this registry key for us. As long as we have the setting defined in the console, then we register it. So we once pointed to the folder, GitHub, repository, whatever we want to do it, and then register a custom store. Well, we're basically set up for that. Okay, we recorded a simple template, but let's be honest, making a module is the more common case. What I need to add at this point, please, the templating system can create anything. You're not locked into we can only template PowerShell. Anything that is plain text is templatable, and you can even it can also include binary files. So let's create a new folder. The exact name of the thing is not that important, but we probably want to remember that and include it as part of the presentation materials. So item type directory stored. There we go. So let's create a I'm not going to mess that up again directly because code just doesn't work well with the special character. I don't really use VS Code for serious coding. Right. Let's throw in a folder for goodness reasons and include a README file, because if you don't have a README file, it would by default not be included in the Git upload. Okay, now new module manifest. And the new module manifest. Let's not make this any worse, Fred. Point the new module manifest at Closing windows when you no longer need it kind of makes it easy to find what you need. Root module is and run it, and with that the manifest should be filled in. Let's kill the documentation header at the top. It will automatically insert the root module. Let's go with a default of version 0, and we probably should be using a new GUID automatically, otherwise we'd end up always with the same GUID. Author should be author. Company should be company. Copyright should probably be company. Or if you're using private instead, use well, private, your username. We need a description. We don't require anything, but we also don't need all this claptrap. Whoever has added a processor architecture prerequisite. Now, I'm a fan of including my favorite module name, and everything I build depends on the PS framework, and it has a module version of now I always mess this up if I don't check this interactively. So by specifying this, it will pick the currently imported version of the PS framework module and pick the version for that. You can thus dynamically insert the current version of the module that you want to include as a prerequisite. Insert your own company module or whatever you need, no specific need to use the PS framework. And dynamically insert a dependency for the module. We could be including additional prerequisites and resources and formats to process if we had that. Now, this is one thing that is important to me. I don't want the default wildcards. And with that, we have a project ready to rock. So let's create a new template. It has a template name of my module. And now, since we are recording a module and no longer a project template, no longer a single file, we use the reference path rather than file path, which in a moment of lunacy, I decided would be the better way to go. At some point when I can make the time to work on the refactor, these two parameters will become the same parameter, with the winning name also having an alias for the losing name, so there's no need for change anything on that. But at the moment, we need to have separate parameter names depending on whether we are recording a project or a single file. So I record the template. I now outstar to presentation, and I include version 1. And this is going to break if I don't include quotes. And finally, a description. Okay. I admit this was not the way I had in mind, but it would probably be more successful if I include a dollar and actually make it a variable. Okay, we have it recorded. And my module is immediately available. And if we now look into it, we already have, since we also use the demo folder for the templates, so we've got the XML files, but we also now have a my module folder. And if we look into that folder, we have a finished module file with everything in there inserted, pre-configured. If I did not mess up the module version, yes, I did not, it was correctly inserted. The description was included, company name, username, unique GUID was assigned. And just like that, we were able to record a template. Okay. These notes to make sense, I will include it in the correct location. Now, having to include all this information here and more in the call for a new PSMD template is possible. But if we, it would probably be a good idea if we were able to actually have at least a lightweight manifest file, so we don't have to do it every single time. If we keep working on the same template and improving it over time, having to specify the full thing explicitly rather than storing it with the template is not optimal. So in opposite to Plaster, PS module development does not require a manifest file, but it supports having one. And well, I'm trying to avoid being hypocritical about that. We do have I do have a template for that. So invoke PSMD template, and it's called PSMD template reference, bit reference file. And I want to start it with the module template as we recorded. And that is my module. Now here we've got a PSMD template.ps1 file that after recording will not be included in the template that we record. So this file will automatically be skipped. We can specify the template name, the template version. We can specify that it should automatically increment the template version if we record a new template and we already have an old template with the version specified. It will check the latest version and add another build number after that. We can include tags, so we can search templates by tags. So adding tags to the template makes it possible to later search for that. The description is the template description, not the module description. We can store files in the template folder where we record the template and explicitly exclude it from being recorded. That is, for example, if you have meta information, that we need meta information for automating or script building. That is admittedly something I mostly did for myself. And we can also store scripts. For example, here we have good. And by specifying that in the manifest file, we can now call it by name. When we call it by name, rather than having to type the same script block every single time, we can now reference to it by name and by wrapping it in exclamation marks. That is how it can differentiate this from a regular variable that it should insert. So by having a script block here, we can now assign the same GUID multiple times to different files or in the same file. This script block will only be run once. And the same value that was returned will be inserted every single time. That is important, for example, when you try to record a Visual Studio project, where you need to have the same project reference in multiple files, in the PS project file and the solution file. And that makes it available to have the same values again and again. We could, of course, define a second GUID that will be run in addition. So we now can assign 2 unique GUIDs. Ideally, we would be recording something like that, and include that. And now, what we can do when we record it is basically like that. After the reference file, we can skip the template name. We just pointed at the folder and the store we wanted to be written to. And we now have version 2 available. My module in version 101 with every information in there. So I recommend using a module template reference file whenever we create a more complex template. But for simple files, quite honestly, it's never been worth really the effort to go whole hog on that. Yeah, we had versions. Now, if you remember, I postponed explaining something about the default parameter values, how it actually knew what author and what company to include. There is, again, configuration for that in the PS module development namespace, and that is parameter default. I automatically define 2 configuration settings that point at author and company, and you can dynamically add whatever default parameter you want if you've got something that is you frequently insert. For example, if you've got a department that you always want inserted for what department wrote the script, you just add a third registry configuration setting for parameter default.department, insert the department name, deploy it by policy or interactively with register piece of config, and it will all be deployed for you automatically out of the box. That is all nice and well, but what if we don't want these default values? What if we want to specify company? We're not being prompted for that. And what if I want to create a template without having any interactive prompting? I want just to be able to invoke a template unattendedly. I can't really answer the insert name and the description prompts if I want to do that. So, fortunately, we don't need to do anything of the kind. Instead, we have parameter that allows us to specify a hash table and offer every single value that we want specified. Name, description. And now I'm working for a special project, so I want to override the company name to the customer. And invoke that. No prompts, nothing. The new project was created as my module 2. Might be careful about that. And with that, the company name was also correctly overwritten, so the default parameter value was not used in this instance. Okay, then we've got this this character that keeps irking me in the presentation and might irk you to type, especially if you have got a notebook that does not have any numpad. So are we stuck with that? No, we are not. The module PS module development, because here we've got the identifier and we can absolutely override it. And we are not stuck with a single character, so we could instead, what went wrong? That went wrong. Now, VS Code, would you mind screwing with me during the presentation? I would appreciate it. We override it with a new value of our choice, and we can, for example, tell it every variable should start and end with 3_. This only matters at record time, so if we record a template and with a different identifier, overriding it to a new value will not change anything, will not break any templates. But just with that, it now no longer records the foreign character as the identifier. And you can register it as you can do every single other, as you can edit every single other configuration setting. Okay. Now, when you invoke a new template, it will write all the text files under a specific encoding. And encoding is always a pain point. And the default encoding text files will be generated under is written in this configuration setting, which happens to be UTF-8 with byte order mark. Why UTF-8 with byte order mark? Because PowerShell files that are generated should actually just have that encoding. That makes a PowerShell script reliable no matter in what language, in what locale it was written, and later in what locale it was executed. Because just for example, a German person that tries to run a PowerShell script that was written by a Japanese person with the default Japanese encoding will not have much fun. Or Arabic scripts that were generated in Arabic regions, they all have problems with the default encoding. So I tell the system always UTF-8 with byte order mark, and you don't have any problems with that. If for some reason you need to override that, you can override this interactively in the encoding parameter. And define, for example, if you must not have a byte order mark, you can tell it to not do that. Or you can override this configuration setting to update your global default encoding for everything my projects use. Finally, binary files. These are important. If you want to include a file in the template that is not a text file, they cannot insert things and it needs to have an extension, that is excluded by default. That is not included. And we have a few extensions that we already know about, that we should not be messing with them. These will just be recorded. Nothing will be inserted into those, and they will not cause any problems. If you want to include other binary file types with different extensions, you need to update this value. Otherwise, it will try to create them with a UTF-8 byte watermark. And that's not going to work out well for most binary files if you include a byte watermark for something that is not a text file. All right, this is pretty much the state that we're currently at. I'm still working on the tooling. So what's on the to-do list? I am definitely going to further restrict what you can define as a name for something to insert, like synopsis. At the moment, you can insert any kind of thing. You could have a smiley as part of the name, or you could have a line break and multiple line breaks. You could, in fact, put an entire essay as a variable name. It would work. And that is fragile in case we accidentally encounter the identifier in the wild. So I am probably going to be constraining it. So if you define a new template, by all that is holy, please use sane parameter names. What will be supported will be numbers, letters, underscore, dash, and that's pretty much it. Unless somebody has a specific use case where I should be supporting still more. That is to make parameter names more reasonable. What I currently don't have is a native option to include multiple choice, like pick one out of three. The parameters like description or synopsis can at the moment not have any description, which in case you have a template that you don't use all that often is a limiting factor. So adding descriptions is very high on my list of things to do. At the moment, there is no way to conditionally include files or folders. For example, what I'd like to see is you pick what license to create a project under, and then it will only generate the correct license file for you. At the moment, it doesn't do that. And script blocks will always be executed first before anything exists, and I want more automation options in there, where and when we can run code and do things with files and folders. And another one is templates, being able to call other templates. For example, the module template we just invoked could have invoked another function template to already pre-populate the functions folder. That is something I'm looking into including, but there's one golden rule for me. I can never ever do a change that will reduce the complexity. That will increase the complexity a user must face rather than what a user can face. Remember at the beginning, we were able to simply record a file within a template within a few minutes. If that would ever stop working, if that ever got more complex, I'd have failed and I would have to go back and fix that. That would be a bug. I always wanted it to be an approachable templating system that everybody can use. You can find everything described about the templating system on this link. As mentioned, I will be sharing the entire presentation material, so you don't need to write that down right now, but it will be shared using Meetup. So what do I use this for? I have templating. I've got documentation on that link up there where I describe all the content, and I've got a default template for that. That is in my shared system PSF documentation. Let's run one up. Now it prompts me the module I'm creating for. I'm working on PS module development this time. I can run any kind of script block, so I can also use out grid view. And now if I what did I call it? Demodoc.md. It pre-created the entire scaffold that I use for template for documenting my projects. I also am currently writing a book, fantasy novel. Just wouldn't let me rest without doing that. So I also have it's about gods and the main characters. So I've got default templates for the way I describe those kind of things in my documentation. So I can also just set up a character scaffold and get started with that. How is that for time? I'm kind of losing track here.
Yeah, we need to wrap up slowly.
Beg your pardon? I did not catch that.
I think we have some people might have questions.
I have trouble understanding you acoustically, sorry.
Okay, so I think we have some people who have questions, and I'm going to go around with my telephone, and we need to be careful with the sound now.
Okay.
Any questions? Questions? No? No questions. Okay. We have one person with a question.
Okay.
Thank you for this. This has been really useful. One question that's on the PS framework module. Would you ever consider creating an output that is compatible with CM trace?
You mean for the logging?
Yeah, that's correct.
I would consider doing that, indeed. I am also happy to include pull requests or have some discussions on exactly what would be the requirements for that, because I don't mind including additional formats, but as long as I don't have a business case for a customer, it would be going out of my free time and I'd need to have some interest in the format in order to include that. So if you can share some information on that, I would definitely consider adding this as an output format, yes.
Lovely, thank you. Is the best way to raise an issue on the GitHub?
Please do so.
Lovely, I'll do that soon. Thank you.
If it's an issue on GitHub, odds are I will not forget about it. If it happens in a discussion somewhere, right now at some conference, meeting somewhere else, my memory is pretty lousy. I have best intentions, but I'm limited about that way. So if it's an issue, odds are it will happen the next time I touch the component.
Yeah, just hang on.
Any more questions?
No, it doesn't look like we have any other questions.
All right. In that case, I'd like to take a quick look at what the default templates are all about, what I ship by default, because you don't even need to necessarily invent a new template if the current ones already include what you need. So what I have by default is, in case you are using the PowerShell framework logging and you want a custom dedicated logging for your module, I include a template to generate an entire logging provider that works like the log file provider, basically a dedicated log file locally. At the moment, only CSV, XML, or JSON. The template reference, obviously, I support creating Azure functions, scaffolding. I've got a plain module template, very similar to what we recorded today. And I've got a huge PowerShell project for having a PowerShell module with full CI/CD and automatic publishing to the gallery and everything included. So if you ever need to create a full PowerShell project, that would be the one to go to. It assumes the resultant module should be using the PowerShell framework, but you're not locked into that. You can remove the dependency in a few minutes if you want the resulting module to not be dependent on that. So that. If we now look at the demo folder, we now have a full module scaffold with resources for everything, build scripts that will do all the testing. C# project in case you need C#. A C# solution that is pre-configured for PowerShell use, and a module with everything in there. That, however, is a presentation all of itself. That would be kind of bursting the amount of time we have. In case you're not using it yet and are interested in taking a look, I like doing demos for that, but I think we're running out of time today.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. I think that was very mind-boggling for most of us. Usually the guys are not as quiet and they ask a lot of questions. I think it was just a little bit overwhelming, but we're going to publish this on YouTube, so the guys can watch it again and dive into it again. So thank you so much for it. It was a pleasure to have you, and also that you agreed on short notice to join us tonight to present this.
Well, thank you for having me over. Sorry about the delay, and let's just say I always love bragging about my toys. So I was having a good time here.